Hi everybody, welcome to the Truly Myrtle Podcast. I'm Libby. It is so lovely to have you with me. This is my not live podcast. Normally I go live every week, 10 a.m. Thursdays, New Zealand time. I go live onto YouTube and on Facebook, and I get to chat with you in the comments and I get to see what you're up to and all of that good stuff. But this week I'm not really here. Like, I'm here, but I'm not actually here. I'm away. I'm at Knit August Nights in Napier here in New Zealand. It's a weekend of yarny fun. It's so much fun. I'm teaching all weekend. I've taken a whole bunch of patterns down and all my samples. I'm breathing in yarn fumes. I'm resisting buying too much yarn because I've bought so much this year already. I'm chatting to people. I'm trying out spinning wheels and a spinning chair that someone is bringing for me to try, and I'm having a good time. But you normally see me on a Thursday with my cup of coffee and something to chat about. So I thought, why don't I just record something for you to watch? That's a good idea. That's what people do. I used to do that. When I first started my podcast years ago, how many years ago? Maybe 10 years ago did I start a podcast? I can't remember. I recorded it. And I would do it like a normal person, and I would put it up whenever I recorded it, monthly, fortnightly, weekly, whenever I did it, I would put it up. I'd battle the internet here in my rural property, and everyone would come and watch it, and then you'd leave me comments. And then I got a taste for live videos and seeing you in the chat and being able to talk to you. And so more than a few years ago, I went to doing live videos. But anyway, here I am. I'm here for your Thursday morning, so you've got something to watch and you're getting your Truly Myrtle fix. Now, I have got something to talk to you about. I've actually got a little bit of fun for you this week. I was thinking about a lot of the questions I get when it comes to knitting. I was thinking about the stuff we talk about at Wardrobe Toolbox. If you haven't checked out Wardrobe Toolbox, you might want to do that. The doors open again in September. It's really, really useful and supportive and fun and generally positive. Someone told me the other day it brought joy to knitting. So that's quite nice. I like that. Anyway, I was thinking about some of the questions that I get, and we get a lot of similar questions. And I thought one of the things to think about is being ready to cast on. Like, I know a lot of people, they want to make a garment, or maybe they've made lots of garments and they just haven't been 100% happy with all of them or any of them. And they feel excited. They want to start something new. You know, our fingers start itching. We get new yarn. We find a pattern. They just want to cast on. And I think there's quite a few things you can do to be ready for knitting, to set yourself up for success. So I thought we would talk about that today. Some of the things I think are worth doing, and I just think sometimes you just got to suck it up. And sometimes those things might feel like, oh, really? Oh my gosh, do I really have to do that? Yes, you do. You don't have to, of course, but it does help. And I think when you start getting in the rhythm of it, it doesn't feel onerous. It just feels like this is what I do before I start, so that I know I'm going to cast on. I'm going to feel really confident about what I've chosen. I'm going to feel really confident about what I'm about to do. And I know that when it's finished, I'm going to wear that thing and I am going to love it. So that is, I think, what we all want. We do not want sweaters sitting in the back of our wardrobe, just gathering dust and moth holes and wishing we'd started differently. Now, I'm going to talk about garments. You could translate this to accessories if you want, but I'm primarily thinking about garments when I'm talking about this list, this mythical list of things that I've thought about that would be good to try. So, the first thing I think is worth thinking about is your style. What is your style? I don't know about you, but as I approached into my 40s and now in my 50s, I have really changed what I want to wear. My body has completely changed. My life is different. I'm not chasing little kids anymore. I'm not doing quite as much running around in the car because kids drive. I'm not entertaining endless housefuls of children. They sort of look after themselves. My life is different and my style has changed, and I feel different. I'm a grown-up person. So I've really thought about what is it that I want to wear. And I go back to looking at other people, what they're wearing. I scroll through Pinterest. I try and get inspiration. I often come back to the same core idea of what I want to wear, but it just changes a little bit as I get older. And thinking about what you want to wear is a really good place to start. So before you go out and randomly grab a pattern or decide, I'm just going to make that looks amazing, I definitely want to wear that, just stop for a second and think, do I actually want to wear that? Will I wear that? Will that suit me? Is this the kind of thing I want to wear? And then decide whether you're going to make that pattern. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security with patterns. I put out patterns and I show you the best photos. I show you the photos that make the garment look the best. Be aware of that when you're looking at patterns. If you have got a Ravelry account, go and have a look at other projects in Ravelry. You can see what other people look like in that pattern. If you can find someone that looks a little bit like you, see what the pattern looks like on them. Really be critical about how many sizes there are and where do I fit into that, and what do people look like in that size, and what weight is the yarn, and what do I like to wear, and what colors are they? Am I being drawn into colors that actually don't suit my wardrobe? All of those things. What shape is my body? What do I want to wear to really enhance my own shape? What do I feel comfortable in? What does my day look like? Think about your style. It's a huge, huge topic. I don't think there's ever a destination at the end of it. I think it evolves. I think it's an enormous amount of fun that you really can have a good time thinking about style and experimenting. We're never too old to experiment. And yeah, just think about your style. So that would be my first suggestion, is to nail what you want to wear. Even if it's just one outfit, just think about that outfit. What do I want it to look like? It's going to include knitwear. How do I want to put it together? The second thing to think about is selecting yarn. Not all yarn is made equal. Not all yarn is used for the same things. We talk a lot about yarn in Wardrobe Toolbox. We talk about how different fibers behave. We talk about what combinations of fibers will do. We talk about what particular garments require in order to really look their best. It helps to look at what a designer's used for their yarn. And if you want a garment that looks like what the designer has made, look at the yarn and try and find something similar if you aren't going to buy something the same. I do think it's worth really experimenting with yarn and going out of the box, because you could take one beautiful blueprint of a pattern that suits you, works for your life, you just love it, you know it fits well or it's going to fit well, and then you could make it 10 different ways depending on the yarn that you choose. So you could choose fibers that are slinky. You could choose fibers like the one I'm wearing, which is really soft and cuddly and smooth. You could choose colorful fibers that are a little bit more muted. You could choose really bright colors with a crisp finish, high twisted yarns. You could have anything from a worsted spun to a woolen spun. Now, if all of this is not making much sense to you, then it is worth having a little investigation into the properties of yarn. And like I said, that's the kind of thing we talk about at Wardrobe Toolbox. That topic is enormous. And again, it's a really, really interesting and fun topic, because all of a sudden you gather so much power in your hands to make something that you want, because you understand what that beautiful skein in your hand or in your stash is going to do. You can go to yarn festivals, you can look at yarn on tables, and you might fall in love with a color, but you could look at what the fiber is and you could say, oh, look, I have an idea for that. I have a vision for that beautiful woolen spun fingering there with some lovely muted colors, and I'm going to grab that one as well, because I can see that would make that lovely little colorwork top that I'm thinking about not too crisp. Maybe it's going to be a little sort of vest thing that goes over the top of something else, a slip over. Oh, I've got a whole picture of what's happening in my head. When you have a little more knowledge around yarn, you can start thinking a little bit more like a designer and making clothes that really work for you. So yarn, selecting yarn is my second point. I'm looking at this handout I've made for you, but I don't have my glasses on, so I'm wondering if I'm saying the same as the handout. I think I might be. I hope I am, kind of. Taking measurements, that's my next heading. Taking measurements is absolutely and utterly critical if you want to make a garment that fits you, because you need to know who you're knitting for. So if you're knitting for you, what do you measure? Now, they're only numbers, and I know that people, us, women, middle-aged women, lots of us have a hang up about numbers. I understand that. I've been there. Numbers are just numbers. They're just numbers. Can we just think about them like that for a minute? I know it's tricky. But if you think more about your shape and less about the numbers, I think that will be to your advantage. But you do need to know your measurements, because when you've got your measurements, you can choose a size. And there are some core measurements that I think are worth finding out. Your upper bust measurement, where you measure up under your arms. You want to take your full bust measurement too, but this measurement with the tape measure tucked under your arms and your shoulders just relaxed. Breathe normally. Don't puff up your chest with anticipation. Just breathe normally and take that measurement under your arms reasonably firmly. That's a absolutely brilliant start to be choosing a size with that, because it means that things are going to fit you at the shoulders, and then we can deal with what's happening under here or under here. This part a little more tricky to change just through here. So your measurements, I'd take your upper arm measurement. I'd probably take my cross shoulder measurement. So I just feel for those little indents next to the bones on the edge of my shoulders. It's not quite on the edge of my shoulder. It's inside a little bit, sort of where your bra strap goes. And get someone to help you with that one. It probably is easier just to go across your back reasonably straight, just to take that cross shoulder so you know what your bones are doing. The other measurement I would take is your hips. Particularly if you have hips, much broader hips proportionally to your bust or your shoulders, and your full bust circumference. If you have particularly full breasts, certainly bigger than compared to your shoulders, or smaller compared to your shoulders, I would take your bust measurement as well. So those ones would be the ones that I'd absolutely start with. But know who you're knitting for and take them reasonably regularly, maybe once every 6 months. Depends how fast your body's changing at the moment. If it's stopped, if it's just about to start, if it's, whatever's happening to your body, take it. You'll know how often. Just take it at regular intervals and make a note of them and put them to one side, and then forget about the numbers. Okay, next thing I've got on my list is swatching. I know I say swatching a lot. I do like swatching. I never used to know what swatching was, When I used to knit as a young person, I didn't know what swatching was. I used to see something about gauge and think, those numbers don't apply to me. Surely that doesn't apply to me. It didn't apply to me. I didn't use it. But I was a little teenager who wore anything and would fit it. Like, it didn't really matter as a teenager what I put on. So those days have changed. They're definitely different. Now, when I'm making beautiful garments with expensive yarn and my precious and valuable time is spent knitting for me, I want those things to fit me. I want them to turn out just like I'm dreaming. I want the colors to work just like I thought. I want to be able to do the stitches as beautifully as I can, and I want the garment to fit me just the way I want it to fit me. So swatching serves lots of purposes. Swatching is an absolutely brilliant way to test whether your colors are working together, and you just can do a little tiny swatch for that. You don't need to do a big one. Swatching is a really, really helpful way to test whether you know how to do those stitches. So again, you can just do a little bit of knitting. You don't have to do a lot. If you're thinking, oh flip, this is a different kind of button band, I'm not sure how I'm going to pick this up against reverse stockinette, just practice. Practice before you have to do 142 stitches. Just do 15 or 10 or something. Just do a little amount of picking up stitches just to get in the rhythm of it. You might want to actually really practice picking up stitches, and it's a good idea to start on something small. So there are lots and lots of reasons for swatching. I thoroughly recommend doing it. I know it feels like, all I want to do is knit. All I want to do is start my garment and finish this garment. That's all I want to do. It does pay just to slow down, create a fabric that you love, because at the end of the day, that is the aim of the game. You're creating fabric that you love, because with knitting, we're not just assembling pieces with pre-made fabric. We're actually making the fabric. So when you've had a little bit of a play, you've used certain needles with certain yarn, maybe they do or they don't feel so good, you've swapped those out, you've tried different sizes, you've looked at the swatch, you've blocked it, you've measured before you block it, you measure it after you block it, you look at it critically and you say, do I like that fabric? And you don't think, she'll be right. She'll be totally right. I'm sure that's fine. You don't necessarily think that. You can think, actually, I think I could improve it slightly. I think maybe it's a little airier than I was thinking. Or maybe it's a little bit dense. I don't want this garment to stand up on its own. Rather than shooting for the gauge in a pattern, Shoot for fabric that you love, and then we can make the gauge and the pattern work. Once we've got fabric we love, you could dance around a little bit with needle sizes to try and get as close as you can to the pattern, but try and find a fabric that you absolutely think makes the yarn sing and that you're happy with. Okay, so that's my advice about swatching. Choose a size. That's my next thing on the list. Choose a size. Let's choose the proper size to fit our shoulders. Let's not worry about any of this below our shoulders. Let's not worry about it at all just yet. We can do a lot to fix that. We need to find a size that fits us nicely through the shoulders. So we start with our upper bust measurement, and then we add a little bit of ease to that depending on how full or loose you want your garment. But if you start here, you will find a size that works pretty well with your shoulders. And that way, if you have very broad swimmer's shoulders, you will find a garment that fits. If you have very narrow shoulders and a very full bust, you will find a garment that fits. And then once you've done this part, and once you've figured that out, then you can make adaptations and modifications for your arms. You can make them fuller for arm circumference and slimmer. You can make them longer. You can make them shorter. You can put bust darts in. You can add horizontal bust darts, vertical bust darts. You could put waist shaping in. You could put A-line shaping in. You could put little scoops out with vertical darts at the back for your bottom. There's all sorts of things you can do. You change out hems. You change out button bands. You change necklines. Just get this bit to fit. That's my that would be my first point, is to try and figure out what size fits me. The thing about knitting patterns is that designers will use a set of standards. Sometimes they use similar standards, sometimes not. They'll often adjust them because often they will model them. So they will make a set of standards that reflect their body a little bit more. Like, for example, my standards that I use for my patterns tend to be slightly generous in the arms and slightly generous in the tummy, because that's me. I have slightly fuller arms compared to my bust and slightly fuller tummy compared to my bust. Now, I have much narrower hips, but I don't really make any difference to that because I don't accommodate a very large hip in my standard. It's just a standard hip that goes with the bust, even though my hips are smaller, because I can get away with having a little bit of fabric around my hips. But my arms, I just want them to fit me. So I don't have overly large sleeves that go into my patterns, but they're definitely just a little bit more generous than they would have been maybe 20 years ago. Anyway, I use my set of standards. A lot of people do. You can buy standards. I've bought standards before. And then I will design based on those. So there's an expectation that, for example, your upper bust and your full bust will be about 2 inches apart. And most of the standards are expecting that you're about a B cup in the bust. Well, I'm not even a B cup in the bust. So a lot of people could do with a bit of a bust start. A lot of people are not 2 inches difference between their upper bust and full bust. A lot of people have fuller arms and a bit more flesh around the topper part of their arms these days, certainly down to your elbows as we get older, and a lot of us are rounder in the tummy and fuller in the hips. So those things aren't going to be catered for in these off-the-rack patterns, and it's really impossible for a designer to make something that fits you perfectly because we're all so different, which is what makes it all so fun. So the idea is that you figure out what size is going to fit me through here with my upper bust and my shoulders, because those two measurements tend to go together. And then from there, I can add in a few modifications. But I'm going to start by choosing that size that fits me at the shoulders. The last thing I've got on my list is thinking about mods. And so I've sort of talked about that already. I've talked about how it's easier to find a size that fits you up here and then make modifications. All down here, everything down, everything else. Honestly, you can do that. You can change the necks. You can totally change a garment even with the yarn. You can use a different gauge and make it work for the pattern. You can add in details that you love. You can put in bust darts, waist shaping. We've talked about all that, those kinds of things. So are you going to make mods to your pattern? Before you start, just have a little think. Do I think I'm going to make mods to the pattern? Have a look at the schematic. Compare it to your finished measurements. Make any adjustments that you need to the schematic so that you think, oh yeah, no, look, my hips need to be broader and I think I'm going to add a bit of A-line shaping in there. And actually, I quite like to turn that little crew neck into a slightly more scooped, and I might throw in a cowl on the top of that, like a cowl neck on the top. So I am going to do these things. Some of them I might plan before I start. But others, I can just wing that once I get going. Like, I know my arms want to be straight. I have about 2 inches of straight arm underneath the sleeve once I get the sleeve going, because a lot of people don't change shape there. But you might decide, you know what, my arms don't really change shape until I get to my elbow. So I'm going to have a straight sleeve to my elbow, and then I'm going to do my decreases down to my cuffs. Might make my cuffs slightly broader than it says in the pattern, just because I like a little bit of a fuller cuff, and then I'm going to gradually slope my sleeve down. And that sort of modification you could do once you get to the sleeve. You don't have to do that before you start. But you might be the person who likes to plan it all out, do all your maths, get it all sorted, have little sticky notes to remind you where you're making changes. Don't forget to write all the changes down, because if you're anything like me, you're going to forget what needles you used, you're going to forget what gauge you got, you're going to forget what modifications you've made. It really pays to have a knitting notebook or to write those things down. So you can decide before you start, I'm going to do this one now and I'm going to work out that one later, because she'll be right. Remember that if you do things like add length to a garment or take away length from a garment or change a neckline, if you're making a cardigan, then the bands are going to change. The neck band, the front bands, button bands, it's all going to change. If you're adding to a hip so that you've got some nice A-line shaping or even waist shaping that comes in and then out, but you go fuller than the pattern at the bottom, your bottom band is going to change. So just make a note to yourself that you're going to do that. So when you get there, you remember, oh yeah, that's right. I need to make sure that I've got a stitch count of whatever, multiple of 3 if I'm going to do a in the round knit 2 purl 1 all the way around. I need a multiple of 3 for a sweater for that. Oh yeah, I should probably think about that. It always helps to find another size in the pattern. I'll just say that now to work to if you're going to do that. So those are my lists of things. That's my setting you up for success idea. I have made you a handout. It's a guide, really. I've made you a special guide. It's called Setting Up for Success, and it's quite a full guide. You can grab it. You'll just need to go to, I'll put links underneath these videos so you can find it. So I've got the steps I've just talked about. I've also got a little section here about understanding ease, because when you're choosing a size, and I talked about adding a bit of ease to that size in order to know what, to your upper bust, to know what size to choose. I've talked here about adding ease, about what typical ease guidelines are, what you should think about when you've got a fuller bust. I think you'll find that quite helpful. I've talked about ease before on my podcast. It might be worth going and have a poke around and see if you can find something. Ease is something else we talk about in Wardrobe Toolbox. To be honest, we talk about all of these things. This is what we do. This is what we learn inside Wardrobe Toolbox. How to plan for, choose, prepare for, and create a garment that you just really love and fits you beautifully. It is so rewarding for me to see the women, at the moment they're all women in Wardrobe Toolbox, to see them make clothes and then put them on and say, wow, I didn't know I was going to do this, and it feels so good. It is so rewarding for me to see that. I love it. So I've got that on the front page. There's a 2-page thing. So on the back, I've got a little section called Clothing Not Whip, and the idea with that is I've got a set of 8 questions, and when you're thinking about what do I want to wear and what do I want to make, I've got 8 questions to go through, and I would like you to think about your next whip, your work in progress, as a piece of clothing. I think it changes our mindset if we're about to cast on a cardigan that we want to wear with those trousers or that skirt, or I've made a shirt, and if you think about it so you're going to wear it, I think it adjusts our thinking rather than, oh my gosh, I've had such a hard day, I'm just going to sit down and knit. Oh, all I need to do is just knit. I need to knit. Rather than going into it with that mindset, which I think we all have at some point, and once you've started knitting, you can do that. But when you're planning your knit, rather than just give me something to knit, just let me cast on, rather than that feeling, thinking I'm going to make a piece of clothing. And going through these questions, I think they're quite helpful questions, especially if you're like I was, and still am sometimes, where I'm thinking, who am I anyway now? Like, who is this woman at 52? Like, what do I want to be? And how do I want to look? And what do I want to wear? And oh my gosh, should I be wearing something different? Not should. I don't have it. You don't have any shoulds. But what do I want to look like? And what is my style? Like, I thought I had a style. Now I'm not sure about my style. These are really good questions to go through if you're in that place. And then finally, I've also got on this sheet here a pre-knitting checklist. And it goes over, now you've heard everything I've said. Once you've done these other things on the sheet and you've had a read of those, you'll be able to go through the checklist and you'll be able to just tick them off before you start your next garment. Just so you can think, oh yeah, okay, I got it. I got all these things. Yeah, done that. I done that. Right, now I'm ready. Let's go. And I'm going to have fun knitting this thing, and I'm going to feel really confident, and I'm going to finish by just making something that I absolutely love. So you can grab that handout or guide. It's called Setting Up for Success, and I will put links below. So just go and follow the links, and it will take you up. It'll get sent straight to your inbox, and you can have that. It'll give you a little taste. It just gives you a little taste of some of the things we do inside Wardrobe Toolbox. It's really huge. It's a huge topic, making clothes. It's an absolutely enormous topic. It feels like it has no edges. There's always something to talk about. There's always new things to learn. There are new adventures to be had when you're knitting and sewing and making things for yourself. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about Wardrobe Toolbox, head over to wardrobetoolbox.com and you can have a read all about it over there. And the doors open next on the 18th of September, and they're only open for 10 days, and then they close and they'll open again in March. And so we're coming into season 10 of Wardrobe Toolbox. So we started in March 2020 and we've been going, seasons are 6 months long. Some people, the majority of people that are in there actually started at the beginning and they've stayed the whole time. And they're still my biggest group. And they just they came because they wanted to learn more about making things that fit them and that understanding a little bit more about what they were doing. And they've stayed because they've having success with that, and they've got to know each other. And the community is really, really lovely. It's a really warm and welcoming and incredibly supportive community. And there's just something to be said for that. So you can go and find out a little bit more about Wardrobe Toolbox. Now, if you want to stay in touch with me, I will tell you about the doors when they open as well on the 18th of September. So you can just sign up to my mini mag at trulymyrtle.com/mini mag. Those people on my mini mag already, you will get this little guide in the mini mag tomorrow. I'll send it to you, but you're more than welcome to grab it today if you want, of course. But otherwise, people, that was my podcast for this week. So it has been lovely to chat to you. It's quite weird not having your comments though, so I can go, hang on a minute, let me see what you're saying. I haven't been able to do that, but I thought it was fun just to leave you with something. So I will see you next week live, 10 o'clock Thursday morning in New Zealand time. I can't tell you what the date will be, but it will be next Thursday. And I will see you live right here, same place, same time, ready to chat with you. Have a lovely, lovely week. I'll see you later. Bye, everybody.